Hello everyone, my name is Anika Anwar and I will start my presentation now. So this is the last part of mini workshop and the topic of my presentation is security in wireless communications. So my today's talk will include an overview of wireless communication, that is what is network wireless communication and what are the security requirements for wireless communication, what functionalities we need to ensure to have a secure wireless communications. Then I will talk about some common security attacks in wireless networks that can obstruct the secure communication between devices. And I will also mention some general security solutions that we can take as a precaution and are very easy to apply. Finally, I will discuss about my research topic, that is security in connected vehicles communication, which is also wireless. And since this is a vast research area, I will just briefly discuss some security threats related to connected vehicles. So about me, I'm currently doing my PhD in cybersecurity at Queen's University. I'm working in Queen's Reliable Software Technology Lab with Professor Mohammad Zulkarnain. He's an excellent supervisor, and my current research area is security in vehicular communications, which I already mentioned, and I will talk briefly about that at the end. So let's start. So about wireless communication. So any of you currently not using wireless communication, like not connected here using Wi-Fi, you can raise your virtual hand, but I guess everyone here, we are all using Wi-Fi, so wireless communication is everywhere now. So it is the fastest growing and most vibrant technological areas in the communication field. It is a method of transmitting information from one point to another without using any connection like wires, cables, or any physical medium. Generally, in a communication system, information is transmitted from a transmitter to a receiver that are placed over a limited distance. In a wired communication, the medium that transferred the information is a physical path like coaxial cables, twisted pair cables, optical fiber links, etc., which guides the signal to propagate from one point to other. But with the help of wireless communication, the transmitter and the receiver can be placed anywhere between few meters, like a TV and a remote control, to a few thousand kilometers, like satellite. But if there is no physical medium, so how does the wireless communication transmission happens? Even though there are no cables used in wireless communication, the transmission and the reception of signals is accomplished with antennas. So antennas are electrical devices that transform the electrical signals to radio signals in the form of electromagnetic waves and vice versa. So these electromagnetic waves propagates through space, and both transmitter and receiver has at least one antenna. So today by wireless communication, we generally mean wireless devices or systems like smartphones, our computers, laptops, tabs, Bluetooth technology, printers. So wireless network can operate in one of two modes. One is infrastructure, where in infrastructure mode, all devices on a wireless network communicate with each other through an access point like a wireless router. And in ad hoc mode, each node transmit data directly to other nodes without any access point, like when I'm sending a command from my computer to a printer directly with the help of network adapter. So that is ad hoc communication. So there are several advantages of wireless communication for which we switch from wired network to wireless. The first one is the cost of installing wires, cables, and other infrastructure, which is eliminated in wireless communication, and that lowers the overall cost of the system compared to wired communication system. Installing wired network in a building, like digging up the earth to lay the cables and running those wires across the street, is extremely difficult, costly, and also time consuming job. So the setup and installation of wireless communication networks, equipment and infrastructure is very easy, and we need not to worry about any hassle of cables. So, and also the time that required to set up a wireless system, like setting up a Wi-Fi network, for example, is very easy, and it takes less time than a full cable network. Second, the data is transmitted very fast, and since there is no cable and wires involved in wireless communication, there is no chance of communication failure due to any damage of these cables by environmental cause, cable splice, or anything. Also, the most interesting advantage, that is the mobility that wireless communication system offers. It offers the freedom to move around while still connected to the network. Working professionals these days can access internet anywhere and anytime without carrying any cables or wires. This also permits professionals to complete their work from any remote locations. Medical professionals can work in a remote access area and also can be in touch with the medical center if they need help. And also through wireless communication, emergency situations can get immediate help and support. Even though wireless communications has a number of advantages over wired communication, there are a few disadvantages as well. The most concerning ones are interference, health concerns, and of course security. So wireless communication systems use open space as the medium for transmitting signals, and as a result there is a huge chance that the radio signals from one wireless communication system or network might interfere with other signals. For example, the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, they both use 2.4 gigahertz frequency for communication, and when both of these devices are active at the same time, there is a chance of interference. So some of the file sharing application in your phone actually requires you to shut Bluetooth off so that they can work properly. So even though their next concern is health, so continuous exposure to any type of radiation can be hazardous. Even though the level of RF energy that can cause the damage are not accurately established yet, but it is advised to avoid RF radiation to the maximum. So it is actually advised to keep your Wi-Fi mobile data off before you go to sleep, or you can keep your phone further away if they are on. And finally, the one that we people in cybersecurity are more concerned with is security. Since the signals are transmitted in open space, it is possible that an intruder can intercept the signals and copy sensitive information and do many other kinds of damages. So let's look at some incidents to understand the importance of security in wireless communication. There have been several king-size data breaches reported in 2020. So Capital One, as you may know, one of the American bank, reported that the hackers got their hands on over 100 million credit card related records, and they used the information to access around 80,000 accounts as well as huge quantities of additional personal information. Also, Adobe discovered a massive breach in their Creative Cloud suite, and the data for over 7 million users were exposed. Dooders discovered that someone had breached their system and gotten access to the data for approximately 4.9 million people. So, according to some surveys in UK, most of these data breach incidents happened because of unsecured wireless devices such as printer, scanner, mobile phones, or laptop connected to their Wi-Fi network. So hackers got access to their network through these wireless devices. Also, a team of cybersecurity researchers late last week disclosed that existence of 12 potentially severe security vulnerabilities, collectively named Swentooth, affecting millions of Bluetooth-enabled wireless smart devices worldwide, and worryingly, a few of which still haven't been patched. So, wireless devices pose some serious threats. So why we are so concerned about security, as there are many organizations, professionals who are there to take care of it. So To understand that, there was a survey of over 200 security professionals at the 2020 ISA conference to explore deeper into the dangers of rogue access points and understand how security professionals are tackling wireless security. They were asked when was the last time they checked their wireless devices for security. Since they're security professionals, you'd think that they are more cautious than us, but the result was terrifying. So here's the result. Only 30% of them checked their devices for security last week, and 20% never checked their wireless devices from any kind of security, and 19% not even sure they ever checked their mobile phone for any kind of malware or any kind of malicious activities. There are some other statistics like over half of respondents don't know how many devices are connected to the network. Almost 2/3 are not performing weekly security hacks, checks for malicious infections, and only a third are confident that they could prevent a wireless or Wi-Fi attack. So it is not enough to rely on organizations or professionals to take care of security threats, as we all need to be educated about cybersecurity at a minimum level to know the threats that we can so that we can protect our personal devices. So a personal experience, like a few months ago, I received a link in Facebook from my sister, and nothing serious, just a link of an advertisement. So when I asked her about that, apparently she didn't send me that. What she did, she received a similar link in her profile and she just clicked it. So it automatically sends the links to all of her Facebook accounts. So if she knew about phishing accounts that Avista talked about, and she might have not clicked the link without knowing what the link does, she might have asked the sender about the authenticity of the link. So this is the exactly kind of situation where we need more workshop like this and more people in cybersecurity to make people aware of some general threats that we are facing nowadays. So how can we secure the wireless communication? In a wireless network, the information is exchanged among authorized users, but this process is vulnerable to various kinds of malicious threats because of the broadcast nature of the wireless medium. The security requirements of wireless networks are specified for the sake of protecting the wireless transmission against different kinds of wireless attacks, which I will explain a bit later. So there are in general 5 security requirements that needs to be fulfilled to make sure the network is secure from the attacks. So first one is authenticity, which refers to confirming the true identity of a network node to differentiate authorized users from unauthorized users. In a wireless network, a pair of communicating nodes should first perform mutual authentication before establishing any kind of communication link for data transmission. Confidentiality means data is accessible only for the authorized or intended users. So when I send a message, the message should go only to the intended recipient, no one else. Integrity means information transmitted in a wireless network should be accurate and should not be changed while and should be reliable during its entire life cycle. For example, when I'm sending a message, it should not get changed or modified before the delivery. The availability implies that the authorized users can access a wireless network, server, resources anytime and anywhere upon request. For example, I should be able to access my Google Drive from anywhere and anytime, whenever I want, because I'm an authorized user. Finally, non-repudiation means sender or receivers can't deny that they have ever sent or received such a message. If I send someone a message, I should not be able to remove any trace that I have ever sent that message. So now let's look about some common attacks in wireless communications. So the first one I'm going to talk about is impersonation attack. So impersonation attacks are particularly easy to launch and can cause significant damage to network performance. For example, in a wireless network, it is easy for an attacker to collect useful MAC address information. MAC address is a unique identifier assigned to a network interface controller for the use as a network address in communications. It is unique for every devices. So attacker can modify its MAC address by simply issuing an ifconfig command to pretend as another device. Impersonation attacks are usually launched by using other devices' identity, like using MAC or IP address. And these attacks sometimes are the first step for most of the dangerous attacks and used to launch further most sophisticated attacks. In reality, wireless networks lack appropriate security infrastructure and give potential attackers or hackers easy transport medium access. So rogue wireless access points deserve particular attention because they are not authorized for operation. They are usually installed either by the employees or by the hackers. For example, like in an airport where you don't need password or anything to connect to any kind of wireless network. Next, eavesdropping attack. An eavesdropping attack is also known as a sniffing or snooping attack, which is a theft of information as the information is being transmitted over a network by a computer, smartphone, or any other wireless devices to other connected devices. So the attack usually take advantage of unsecured network communication to access data, and it is being sent when it is being sent or received by the user. An eavesdropping attack can be difficult to detect because the network transmission will appear to be operating completely normally. So to be successful, an eavesdropping attack requires a weakened connection between a client and a server that the attacker can exploit to reroute network traffic, which is the information about devices like addresses, IP address, etc. So the attacker installs network monitoring software, the sniffer, which on a computer or a server that intercept data as it is being transmitted. For example, Amazon Alexa or Google Home are very vulnerable to eavesdropping, as are many internet connected devices. So to protect your device from unauthorized eavesdropping, you can avoid public Wi-Fi networks, keep your antivirus software updated, and use very strong password. Next, denial of service attack. It's an attack meant to shut down a machine or a network, making it inaccessible completely to its intended users. So DOS attacks is accomplished by flooding the target network with traffic or sending it information continuously that triggers a crash. In both instances, the DOS attack deprives legitimate users, they can be employees, members, or account holders, the services or the resources that expected. So DOS attackers often target web servers of high-profile organizations such as banking, commerce, and media companies or government companies. So though DOS attacks do not typically result in the theft or loss of significant information, but they can cost the victim a great deal of time and money to handle. There are two general methods of DOS attacks. One is flooding the service and another one is crashing the service. Flooding, for example, you opened your phone and you are receiving advertisement one after another continuously and you cannot access anything else. So it's kind of blocked every other operation. And crashing means after continuous flooding, some websites cannot handle that much request, so they eventually crash. An additional type of DOS attack is the distributed denial of service attack, DDoS. So when multiple systems orchestrate a synchronized DOS attack to target a single victim, that is called DDoS attack. The essential difference is that instead of being attacked from one location, the target is attacked from many locations all at once. This is usually done to a website or system with a big server. Next, the Sybil attack, which is a special kind of spoofing attack where the attacker claims multiple counterfeit identities or impersonate the identities of another authorized node within the mobile network. In a Sybil attack, the node that impersonates other network nodes is known as the malicious node or the Sybil attacker, while the node whose identity is spoofed is known as the Sybil node. So in a wireless network, the nodes get acquainted and communicate with each other via exchange of different kinds of messages. A malicious node can exploit this property to compromise the network or other nodes. The number of Sybil nodes that an attacker can create depends on the computational and storage resources of the attacker. For example, an attacker creates multiple fake identities online to give a specific product some positive reviews so that the buyers buy that product. So you just see that this product has 10 good reviews and you didn't check that those 10 reviews or 10 profiles are new, and you can't possibly know that those 10 profiles were created from the same computer. So you believe them and you buy the product. So Sybil attacks works that way. It impersonates other legitimate devices or people. So there are several kinds of attack in wireless communication, like session hijacking, where a user's session is taken over by an attacker. A session starts when you log into a service, for example, your banking application, and ends when you log out. The attack relies on the attacker's knowledge of your session cookie, so it is also called cookie hijacking or cookie sidejacking. In most cases, when you log into a web application, the server sets a temporary session cookie in your browser to remember that you are currently logged in and authorized. To perform session hijacking, an attacker needs to know the victim's session ID or session key. This can be obtained by stealing the session cookie or persuading the user to click on a malicious link containing a separate session ID. In both cases, after the user is authenticated on the server, the attacker can just take over the session by using the same session ID. And the servers on the other end is then fooled into thinking that the attacker connection is the real one and the original user is currently logged in. A man-in-the-middle attack is when an attacker intercepts communication between two parties, either to secretly eavesdrop or modify traffic that is happening between the two nodes. So attackers might use man-in-the-middle attack to steal login credentials or personal information, spy on the victim, or sabotage communication, or even corrupt the data. So man-in-the-middle attack is one of the most oldest forms of cyber attack. And how does this work? So let's say you receive an email that appeared to be from your bank, asking you to log into your account to confirm your contact information. You click on a link in the email and you are taking what appears to be your bank's website, where you log in and perform the requested task. In such a scenario, the man-in-the-middle attack actually sends you the email and making it appear to be legitimate. So this attack also involves phishing, getting you to click into the email appear to come from your bank. So he also created a website that looks exactly like your bank's website, so you wouldn't hesitate to enter your credentials after clicking in the link. So, but when you do that, you are not logging into your bank account, you are actually handing over your credentials to the attacker, and using that credentials, the man-in-the-middle attacker can actually eavesdrop between the communication between you and your bank. So next one is MAC spoofing. MAC address spoofing attack is where the imposter or hacker hunts the network for valid and original MAC addresses and they can get and giving the hacker the advantage to pose as one of the valid MAC addresses. MAC address spoofing is which is a type of attack where the hacker is also able to bypass authentication checks, as he present this as a default gateway and copies all the data passed on to the default gateway without being identified. So giving the attacker full access of all the application and the data. Next, word driving is a technique that is used to identify and map vulnerable access points. The name comes from the fact that the attacker actually drive around a neighborhood and use a laptop or a GPS device antenna to identify and record the location of wireless networks. This technique is effective since many Wi-Fi networks used by the business organization extend beyond the confines of the building, and they have poor security controls and applied security controls that are applied to secure those networks. And finally, social engineering. It is the term used for a broad range of malicious activities that is accomplished through human interactions. It uses psychological manipulation to trick someone into making security mistakes or giving away sensitive information. So commonly, social engineering involves emails or other kind of communication that invokes urgency, fear, or similar kind of emotions in the victim that leads the victim to promptly reveal sensitive information or click a malicious link or open a malicious file. And because social engineering involves human element, preventing this kind of attack is very tricky. So now, not all of us are security professionals. So what can we do to protect our personal devices from these attacks? We can apply some generic and easy solutions like firewall. At their most basic, firewall works like a filter between your computer network and the internet. So you can program what you want to get out and what you want to get in. Everything else is blocked. So there are several different methods firewall use to filter out information, and some are used in combination. In general, the purpose of a firewall is to reduce or eliminate the occurrence of unwanted network communications while allowing only the legitimate communications to flow freely. In most server infrastructure, firewall provides an essential layer of security that, combined with other measures, prevent attackers from accessing your server in malicious ways. Next, an intrusion detection system, which is a software application or hardware appliance that monitors traffic moving on networks and through systems to search for suspicious activity and known threats, and then it sends up alerts when it finds such items. The overall purpose of an IDS is to inform IT personnel or you that a network intrusion may be taking place, and that alert message or information will generally include information about the source address of the intrusion, the target or victim address, and the type of attack that is suspected. Next, you can use content filtering, which is the use of a program to screen or exclude access to web pages or emails that seems objectionable. So content filtering is used by corporations as part of their firewalls and also sometimes by the homeowners. So they block some specific contents from the internet. Content filtering works by specifying a content pattern, such as a text, strings, or an object within an image that is, if matched, indicate undesirable content and that is to be screened out. A content filter will then block access to this content. It blocks spam sites, which can lead to malware or other malicious software being installed into your computer or network. Next, authentication. It is a process of recognizing a user's identity. It is the mechanism of associating an incoming request with a set of identifying credentials. The credentials provided are compared to those on a file in a database or database of the authorized users. And the authentication process always runs at the start of the application before the permission and throttling checks occur. And before any other code is allowed to proceed, usually the system checks if this command is from any authorized user or not. Different systems may require different types of credential to ascertain a user's identity. The credentials often takes the form of a password, which is a secret and known only to the authorized or individual user of the system. For example, before any download or installing a program, your credentials should be required, which is only known to you. And finally, data encryption, which translates data into another form or code so that only people with access to a secret key, also called a decryption key or password, can read it. Encryption data is commonly referred to as ciphertext, while unencrypted data is called plain text. Currently, encryption is one of the most popular and effective data security methods used by organizations, and sometimes personal people even use that for their own personal devices. So data or plain text is encrypted with an encryption algorithm and an encryption key, and the process results in a ciphertext, which can be only viewed to its original form if you have the decryption key. So we can learn more about these processes, programs, or softwares that can protect our devices and know how they work. And these security measures are in general very easy to use, and you can always learn more about them online. So after that, next I will talk about connected vehicles. Yesterday we had a session by Lama, who also talked about connected and autonomous vehicles. So I am currently working on the security of connected vehicle communications, which is also wireless. So there are some common terms with wireless communication, but since connected vehicles has its own vulnerabilities, so that makes its security more complex. I will just talk about some basic security threats of these vehicles. A connected vehicle is one that is capable of connecting over wireless networks to any nearby devices. It is a very important part of intelligent transportation system. With vehicles becoming more sophisticated and more connected, cars today are connected to more high bandwidth networks in order to enable a range of capabilities. For example, automotive IoT enables high-speed vehicle-to-vehicle and vehicle-to-infrastructure communication. That means with traffic lights or digital road signs to trigger some applications like adaptive cruise control, automatic route planning based on real-time conditions, traffic redirected away from congestions, automatically updated road signs to report traffic or road conditions, communications with drivers, notifying them about crash sites or wrong way drivers ahead, and also automatic vehicle braking to prevent collisions, which is still in trials, and also autonomous and semi-autonomous vehicle control, also in trials. So each of these vehicles uses a set of sensors and electronic control units, also called ECUs, to collect data about the vehicle's behavior and environment and to control the functionalities of the vehicles. ECU, electronic control units of a vehicle, collaborate by exchanging messages, and they encompass the in-vehicle network, also called the onboard unit network. These connected vehicles exchange messages with nearby vehicles and with roadside units. They can communicate directly without any intermediate nodes or indirectly through other intermediate vehicles or infrastructures. But all of these networks communications are wireless. So they have some serious security vulnerabilities, and we are talking about cars in real road. So you can imagine how important this area is, how important it is to secure the cars before you actually put them on the road to be used. So let's see this news. This news is from 23rd November 2020. So Bluetooth attack can steal a Tesla Model X in minutes. So Tesla has always prided itself on its security updates, pushing out new codes automatically to fix bugs and add features. But one security researcher called Leonard Wouters, who is a security researcher at a Belgian university, has shown how vulnerabilities in a Tesla Model X's keyless entry system allow a different sort of update, and using that a hacker could rewrite the firmware of a key fob via Bluetooth connection. So it can lift and unlock code from the fob and use it to steal a Model X in just a matter of minutes. So according to this article, the attacker needs to stand within roughly 15 feet of the victim's key fob, and the hardware kit is necessary to pull off the highest cost around $300, and it can fit inside a backpack and can be controlled from a thief's phone. And in about just 90 seconds, the hardware can extract a radio code that unlocks the owner's Model X. So there is always some security threats to these wireless communications, and the attacker also possesses highly technological advanced equipment and knowledge about how the system works. So we have to be always aware of the vulnerabilities of a system that we are currently building or designing. So now, who are these people that can pose threats to connected vehicles? They are attackers. They can be entities like human or robots who intend to compromise an asset, maybe the vehicle, maybe the driver, and have capabilities to perform threats to the entire system. An attacker could be a car owner, a driver, a mechanic, or an organization officer. So they could have one or many attacker capabilities. The capabilities could be used to potentially compromise a target asset, like they can get physical access to electronic control units, ECUs, or physical access to onboard units, or they can get access to the communication links. So they can compromise the entire system. So mainly these kind of attackers are classified into 5 classes. One is greedy diver, that they deviates from the protocol for personal gains. For example, they sense data about congestion ahead, so the cars can change to alternate route and freeze the road. Next, a snoop who profiles drivers through aggregating data and violating privacy of others. Then there are pranksters. They seek fame through hacking. For example, they can trick 2 vehicles who use a collision avoidance application in order to slow down one vehicle and speed up another vehicle. Thus, the vehicles may crash. They can just do that for fun. Then there are insiders like the mechanics or the employee from the organization that can load malicious software on a vehicle. And finally, the malicious ones, they can attempt to cause serious harm, like manipulating deceleration warning system to crash an entire service road. So we use a simple taxonomy of security and privacy aspects of connected vehicles to understand the vulnerable points of a connected vehicle. There are 6 classes. The first one is security of communication links. These are the medium for transmitting and receiving data between 2 or more entities. There are mainly 4 types of communication happening in a connected vehicle. Number 1 is communication between the ECUs and onboard units and through in-vehicle networks. The second one is communication between a vehicle, between 2 vehicles or a vehicle with the roadside units. They communicate via radio signals or maybe in future using 5G. Then the third one is communication of vehicles with personal devices like vehicle to your laptop, vehicle to your phone. And the fourth one is communication between vehicles and the service providers who provides different kinds of traffic management applications. So next one is data validity. So data are information that is being generated, manipulated, transmitted, and received by vehicles, their ECUs, the roadside units, and the service providers. These data include location data and usually the message that is being transferred from and to the vehicle. Next, security of devices. Devices are the electronic components of a vehicle, that is ECUs and onboard units. The controller, these vehicles usually control the behavior of the vehicle, and a device usually has two parts. One is hardware, the ECU and the onboard unit, and the second one is the firmware, which is the program or software that runs on ECUs or onboard units. Then identity and liability. Identity refers to a characteristics of an entity which separates it from other entities. So liability refers to ability to prove that a specific entity, be that a vehicle or a driver or a car owner, is responsible for a specific set of events, and that is the entity cannot repudiate the responsibility for a specified event. Then access control. It refers to enforcing rules for access or deny to certain functions or data for identified entities. Finally, privacy of drivers and vehicles. It is the right of an entity to be able to control when, how, and to what extent and for what purpose information about themselves is shared with others, and to determine what degree to which the vehicle and the driver will interact with its environments. So these are the 6 classes where any security attacks can happen. They all have their individual vulnerabilities. So we have to see what kind of threats they pose for the attackers. So and next we will see that what kind of security threats are associated with these 6 type of classes. The first one is the trace to communication link. So the trace to messages exchange between the communication parties in the 4 part that we previously mentioned in the last slide are similar. They are all wireless. So any intruder could eavesdrop the communication between 2 parties without their consent. The 2 parties could be, for example, 2 devices of a same vehicle, or 2 vehicles, or a vehicle and a service provider. For example, an attacker installs a mobile phone or a mobile phone spy software on the onboard unit of his victim's vehicle and gets periodically the data that is available on the onboard unit. Then a vehicle then a greedy driver who is required to forward a message it receives to other parties could just drop the message it receives. For example, a prankster may receive congestion alerts from neighboring vehicles that he is supposed to forward to his neighbor but does not forward them. So the prankster takes the alternate route while the other vehicles wait in the traffic. Next, a prankster could fabricate messages or create false messages and send them to other vehicles or devices. For example, a greedy driver makes his car pose an emergency vehicle and continuously sends alert messages to his neighbor vehicle. So the neighbor vehicle will think there is an emergency vehicle ahead and they will just move away and they will let the greedy driver to pass. Then a malicious attacker could alter the messages being exchanged between 2 parties. The attacker may receive messages from one party, change their content and forward them to other communicating parties. For example, a greedy vehicle receives a message about the improvement of traffic conditions, but it changed the message to worse traffic conditions and broadcast them to its neighbor. So all the other vehicles take the alternate route and the road gets free. Then a malicious attacker may receive messages from close by vehicles and they could perform replay attack. And replay attack, which is happens when attackers change the timestamp of the messages and broadcast them multiple times to close by vehicles. For example, a malicious attacker could intercept a message broadcasted by other vehicles and replay it again and again and again to other vehicles to jam the communication channels of any close by vehicles. Next, trace to data validity. Some smart mobile applications actually rely on the validity of the data they use. So false data sent by malicious vehicles could have severe safety impacts such as car accidents. So the attacker can broadcast bogus data or false data in the network, like sending false information about bad traffic condition to affect the behavior of other vehicles. An attacker could also cheat in aggregating data they received from their neighbors. For example, in traffic management application, a vehicle collects information from its neighbor about the count of the vehicle in their proximity. For example, say in 300-meter radius. So these data will be used to compute the count of vehicles in a wider range. For example, say 2-kilometer road length. If the attacker sends false aggregate data instead of the real data it receives from its neighbor, the count will be wrong and it will affect the service application that uses that count. Privacy of drivers means the right of the drivers to control the access of the use of personal data. So sometimes the attacker can also get access of the private data and then change the validity of those data. And using these, they can also do some wormhole attack. For example, the attacker could tunnel traffic information from one part of the road and broadcast them to another part of the road to confuse the passengers or the drivers. Then threat to access control. An attacker could modify data or copy code of onboard units or ECUs to perform unauthorized access. For example, a malicious attacker who wants to reduce his insurance premium could modify the aggregated data collected and computed by its onboard units and before sending them to the insurance service. Next, threat to devices. An attacker who aimed to compromise the vehicle data used by a smart mobility application through altering the behavior of the devices like GPS, ECUs, onboard units of a target vehicle, they either need to have physical access or remote access of the device. So a malicious attacker that has physical access to a device can tamper the device hardware by modifying or deactivating physical sensors, memories, or hardware functionalities. For example, an attacker can change circuits of a device to extract sensitive data like such as cryptographic keys to decrypt personal information like home address. A malicious attacker that has physical access to a device can also tamper the device software by modifying its firmware or could replace a device of the vehicle with a compromised device. For example, prevent it from working properly. For example, a mechanic may replace a cruise control of a vehicle so that it does not work properly. A malicious attacker can also inject dummy messages or jam the communication channel to stop the communication between a vehicle and other parties and prevent important messages from reaching the vehicle, which is I talked about previously is called denial of service attack. And they do this kind of attacks so the vehicles on the road does not get any kind of warning or traffic related messages. An attacker could also change the software installed on a device by tampering the device firmware. For example, an attacker can change the firmware of the onboard unit so that the vehicle does not send speed exceeding warning after a specific speed limit. An attacker could also perform an unauthorized over-the-air update of the vehicle by installing remotely some softwares that can tamper with the regular update of the device. And finally, next, the threat to identity and liability. A malicious attacker uses identity information of another vehicle to impersonate that vehicle, that is, perform a masquerading attack. For example, a vehicle could impersonate another vehicle and sends information such as its own location to the fleet owner application. Also, a prankster or a malicious attacker could use multiple identities to deceive communication parties, that is, perform civil attack. An attacker sends information to an entity but performs repudiation attack, for that is, it denies or any responsibility of sending that specific kind of messages. Finally, the threat to privacy of vehicles and drivers. An intruder could perform a location privacy attack through collecting time series data about the location of a vehicle. For instance, a competing company could spy on its competitor by tracking the location of its vehicle. This information allows the company to extract information about the customers of the competitor. Similarly, an attacker could also violate the driving behavior privacy of a driver by collecting time series data about the use of a driver of his vehicle and then use this data to infer and extract personal information. So, while connected cars offer abundant opportunity for customers or consumers, automakers and their suppliers need to consider what the connected car means for consumer privacy and security. As more connected vehicle hits the road, these vulnerabilities become accessible to malicious hackers using cellular networks, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth connected to the vehicle to exploit them. The potential for hackers to gain unauthorized remote access to these vehicle networks and compromise critical safety systems put at risk not just users' personal information but their physical safety as well. So, as such, automakers must now consider cybersecurity as an integral part of their core business and functions and deployment efforts. So, car makers must secretly design vehicle platforms and platforms and related to digital mobility services from the start, because once the car is in the manufacturing process, it will be really hard to find out the vulnerabilities of the vehicles. So the cybersecurity effort must be put at the beginning. So after that, these are some, at the end, these are some common tips that I have collected, and I really like those tips, cybersecurity tips that you can take measures from this. For example, the number one tip is you are a target to hackers. Don't ever say that this won't happen to me, because we are all at risk of these cybersecurity attacks, and we should take necessary steps for both our personal and financial well-being. Cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. By following cybersecurity guidelines and remaining vigilant, you are doing your part to protect yourself and your devices. Second, keep your software up to date. Installing software updates for your operating system and program is really critical. Always install the latest security update for your device. Turn on automatic updates for your operating system and use web browsers such as Chrome or Firefox that receives frequent automatic security updates. And also make sure to keep your browser's plugins up to date. Third, avoid phishing scams. So phishing scams are a constant threat. Using various social engineering ploys, cyber criminals will attempt to trick you into divulging personal information such as your login ID, password, banking, or credit card information. Phishing scams can be carried out by phone, text, or through any social networking sites, but most commonly by email, because we tend to believe some official emails rather than personal messages via Facebook. So be suspicious of any official looking email messages or phone calls that ask for personal or sensitive information. Number 4, practice good password management. We all have too many passwords to manage, to remember, and it's easy to take shortcuts like reusing the same password for different accounts. So a password manager can help you to maintain strong, unique passwords for all of your accounts. These programs can actually generate strong passwords for you, enter credentials automatically, and remind you to update your passwords periodically. Number 5, be careful what you click. click. Avoid visiting any unknown sites, websites, or downloading software from untrusted sources. These sites often host malware that will automatically install, often silently, and compromise your computer. If attachments or links in the email are unexpected, do not open them, do not click them. Next, never leave devices unattended. The physical security of a device is just as important as the technical security. If you need to leave your laptop, phone, or tablet for any length of time, lock it up so that no one else can use it. If you keep your protected data on flash drive or any external hard drive, make sure they are encrypted and locked up as well. For desktop computers, always lock your screen and shut down the system when not in use. Next, safeguard protected data. Be aware of protected data that come into contact and with its associated restrictions. Keep high level protected data, for example credit card information, your home location, your student record, health information, etc., of your workstation, laptop, or mobile devices. And always use encryption when storing any kind of personal data or sensitive data to your devices. Then install antivirus, anti-malware program. Considering how much we rely on our mobile devices, and they are very susceptible to attacks, so we always have to install the latest antivirus and anti-malware program to our mobile devices. And finally, backup regularly. So always back up your data. If you are a victim of a security incident, the only safeguard way to repair your computer is to erase and reinstall all of them, so you will eventually lose all of your data. So after a certain amount of time, always back up your data. So this is the end of my presentation. So I will take any questions if you have, but don't forget to check our next workshop programs. Like the next part is careers and grad school panel happening on January 22nd. And don't forget the cybersecurity game exercises. There will be prizes, and also the cybersecurity speakers. There are some really good speakers who are doing this presentation, and those presentations are on January 18 and February 1st. So if you have any questions, I'll take them now. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Anika. That was awesome. Just awesome. And I want to thank all of the graduate students in the cybersecurity program for doing such a great job. Can you hear me okay? I can hear myself echoing.
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly.
Okay. All right. So let's go to the Q&A. And we still have a little over 15 minutes to go. Okay, so we did have one way back at 20 after 3. So let me just scroll up to that one. Just give me a second. Oh my goodness, all these comments, it's great. Okay, so is it possible that black hat hackers turn into white hat hackers in a specific situation, or if they get hired by the companies?
I think that was Avista's questions, and I think she already answered that. So it rarely happens that black hat hackers get into white hat hackers, but yeah, they can sometimes happen.
Okay. And there was one that I thought was interesting. They were asking what type of firewall you would recommend.
Okay, so there are several fireworks online. You can search for them, and they actually in the online they actually post firewalls based on what they do and what are the pros and cons of different firewalls. So you can judge yourself and you can check which firewalls works best for you, what kind of content you want to block from your personal devices. So there are actually a list of firewalls. You can just check them online and make sure to check pros and cons of different firewall as well. So you can get a better idea.
So does that include, Anika, the question was, are there any antivirus / anti-malware protection that you suggest besides firewall? So is that...
I'm currently using the one that is already specified, already come with my operating system, Microsoft, that the one that Microsoft provides, and so far I'm okay with that. But if you want to be too cautious, you can install some additional antivirus or anti-malware protection. But so far the one I'm using that comes with my operating system is working just fine. But the main thing is you have to be aware of the threats that can happen to your operating system, and you have to check, you have to perform these security measures monthly or weekly to check if there is any kind of viruses or any kind of security attempts to your devices. So apart from installing malware or apart from installing anti-software systems, you have to do a periodic weekly or monthly security checks as well.
Okay, and Shanti, I'm not sure if you're asking the same, you want an answer to the same question. She said, what about for Mac users?
Well, I'm currently using Windows. I'm not sure about Mac, but I don't think Mac uses any separate antivirus or anti-malware software. So far, my husband uses Mac, and I haven't seen any kind of anti-malware software that comes with Mac. But you can always install additional software or additional programs. You can search the best antivirus, best anti-malware programs online, and you can check its authenticity, and then you can install it.
Great. And here's a great question, because I'm sure we all want to know the answer to this one. If we are a victim of a system attack, what is the best solution in this situation?
Okay, so as I have said, back up your data regularly, and there is a function called, you can back up your operating system state. For example, if I back up currently my operating system state, and when I next come to that backup, this state will still remain. So if a system breach happens, most of the cases you have to remove or reinstall your operating system, so there is no traces of those malwares, because you won't know that if any secret programs has been installed, it's spying on you silently, or it's sending your data to other devices silently. So if sometimes if you think there is a breach to your operating system, most of the cases you might need to reinstall them. So always back up your data and back up your operating system, so that when you reinstall, you can come back to that state, so you don't have to reinstall all your applications again.
And how many times are we told to do that, Anika? And most of us never do.
It's actually true. Yeah.
Okay, so do we have any more questions? I think that we have a lot of thank yous, Anika, for your wonderful presentation. Does anybody else have any other questions before we end the 4th workshop? Oh, hold on. Let's see if we have.